morning. This is the morning news on WSBA, hour number 3. It's the Wednesday morning edition. I'm Gary Sutton.
I'm Joel Sears.
WSBA news time is 8:10. You know, you come across inspiring stories from time to time, and this next one is one I think that really speaks in a positive direction about things that you can do when you're dealt a pretty bad hand. Doug Smith, at 18 years old, was the youngest player to ever have been drafted by the Los Angeles Kings in the National Hockey League, and over the next 11 seasons with the Kings and the Edmonton Oilers, Buffalo Sabres, Vancouver Canucks, and also the Pittsburgh Penguins, he experienced all kinds of fractures and dislocations and a spinal cord injury and a career-ending broken neck, and really disabled him. He's written several books. He is an international speaker. He has written a book called The Trauma Code, Unlocking Your Performance, and he joins us here this morning on the Morning News. Doug, an honor to have you aboard this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Doug, you went through a pretty tough time there. First of all, you're in a pretty tough sport with hockey, obviously. We all have watched that. But your career ended with a broken neck and the horror of a spinal cord injury. And take us from there. Take us through, what you were going through when that happened. And here's something you love to do, and now you can't do it anymore. Where do you go next?
Well, it was one of those things that I've done 10,000 times. And it was a dump and chase. We dumped the puck in, and I was playing in Austria at the time. I had left the Pittsburgh Penguins when Scotty Bowman joined them for political reasons. I went overseas, and when we dumped the puck in, I took off, and I was going to hit the defenseman, and I caught an edge right at the goal line by the goal post. And just a calamity of circumstances, the defenseman fell in front of me, and I went top of the head first into the end boards full speed. And I shattered the 5th and 6th cervical vertebrae in my neck, which resulted in a spinal cord injury, and life just completely changed. Everything went to a dead stop. That's the best I can explain it.
Right.
Everything went to a dead stop. I was stuck. And we all get stuck in our own ways, and that's what I've learned since then, right? My world stopped, and I had to figure out what do I do next.
Yeah, what did you find you couldn't do physically at that particular moment, to kind of lay it out a little bit more here?
Well, when you read my book, you'll find out that I broke my neck in over 200 places. I knew I had broken my spine, but I was neurologically stable at the time of the accident. What happened was they always knew that I would need surgery, and when they opened me up for surgery, everything just fell apart. And my spinal cord got dinged, and I woke up in ICU after surgery, quadriplegic, with the daunting task of making the decision to live or to die.
None of us can sit there unless we've gone through something like that, and I dare say very few people have, but I know people out there that are dealing with some of those right now, whether it be from the kind of thing you were involved in or from war, different things like that. I can only imagine the kinds of thoughts that must have gone through your mind at that particular point in time.
Well, it was, I had gone from, my whole life I'd been conditioned to knock people down, intimidate them, take what they have, and expose every conceivable weakness. Right. And it was all about the brawn. And over the last 15 years, what I've discovered in my life is that neuro comes first, is that the brain comes first. It controls the body. It controls how we feel. The trauma in our life causes everything from PTSD to bullying. Bullying is a great example of how we as a human species learn how to do this, and then we do it to other people. We're not naturally geared that way. So I had to learn a new way of being. I had to create a new normal. And we all have this ability. This is what I've learned, and this is what I document in my work, because I've aligned with universities and scientific researchers. And we all, the amazing thing is, every single one of us has the ability to create a new normal for ourselves.
Well, Doug, you've done something, though, that most quadriplegics and paraplegics can't even imagine, and that's that you recovered. You've made a physical recovery.
I live in this very precarious space in between able-bodied and quadriplegic. So, of the 4 limbs, my right my right arm is numb, 3/4 of it. My left arm is hypersensitive. My right leg, I have a spastic calf, and my leg bounces. Like you see some people that have had spinal cord injuries, their leg bounces when they sit down. And then my left leg is my best limb. But I'm able to walk around, and you would never know that I had a spinal cord injury. So, yeah, so I'm one of the fortunate few that get this second opportunity, and I just didn't want to waste it like so many other people who have been badly injured. I didn't want to waste it. I wanted to document it and get a message out.
So I know you write that at one point in time you were contemplating possibly suicide, and yet you chose to take the first step, and followed by many steps, obviously, since then. Talk a little bit about that whole process.
Well, it was the support that saved my life, and I'm sure your listeners, a lot of them can attest to that. You know, when we're left in a situation that's desperate, or when we're stuck, it's that support that made a difference for me. My wife stepped in and basically said, did what she had always done since we were married 5 years earlier, was encourage me and push me. And she did that, and I got past that initial stage of wanting to die, and I was able to grab a hold of something else, something more positive. And so, my family played a big role in that. And so the support is a critical component. And we know this from research. We know that in rats and pigs now, when they inject stem cells into these animals, that the environment that's created around these animals is the reason that the stem cells activate. That's the reason that these animals recover. They haven't started doing the studies on humans yet, but the same thing, I believe the same thing we're going to find is true.
And Doug, you were an athlete. You're a guy who had goals. You're obviously a guy that had played in a very tough sport, a very physical sport. You're stuck in a situation now where you're actually a quadriplegic. You have to rise back up. You talked about the atmosphere of supportiveness from your wife and others around you. But one of the things that you also learned to understand, I read, was the idea of understanding that the negative effects of past trauma on the subconscious mind is a key to high performance. Get into that for us a little bit.
Well, what happens when you suffer from trauma, and there's 4 different types of trauma. Let's start there, and that's what I document, is catastrophic physical, catastrophic emotional, boiled frog physical, and boiled frog emotional. So
right.
Catastrophic physical is what happened to me. The catastrophic emotional is what happened to my family, and the boiled frog physical would be the constant repeat of concussions, for example. And then the boiled frog emotional, which is the big one, which happens to a lot of us even in the workplace, is the 4th different type of trauma. And so what trauma does is when you suffer from trauma, which it affects the psyche, what happens to you is it causes a disruption between the conscious and the subconscious brain.
Right.
And the conscious brain is the part of us that can get confused through trauma. The subconscious brain just sits there and keeps our heart beating, and it keeps us breathing, and it's where our self-image lies. And if we lose touch with the subconscious brain, all of a sudden we start behaving in ways and we don't know why. And we see that with PTSD. We see that with all different types of traumas. People start behaving in ways they can't control their emotions. They get confused. They can't focus. And that's that disruption between the conscious and the subconscious brain. And I deliver in my book, The Trauma Code, a simple methodology to getting back in touch with your subconscious brain so that you can recover faster and you can perform better.
I coached basketball for about 38 years, and including this year. And one of the things that we got into many years ago was psychocybernetics, the idea that you can program your brain with positive information and it will make you do things that you might not normally be able to do. Did you touch anywhere on that kind of thing? It sounds like you may have crossed paths with that somewhere along the line, either maybe not by that name, but maybe by the use of that, because you've obviously been able to do what some would say are superhuman things to get back to functionality.
Being aware is one of the most important things. So awareness is one of my systems. And, feedback is the lubricant for awareness. So you have to you have to create a lightning rod in your brain for feedback, because people will tell you. Sometimes you're not aware of how you're behaving, right? We all get that. We get it from our wife at a party when they dig their heel into our foot, right?
Exactly. There you go.
See, we're not aware. We don't see it. And this happens to us all the time. And if we've suffered from trauma, it's happening to you. You're just not aware of it. So listen to the people around you. Pay attention to what people around you are saying, and sit down with people who you trust and let them share with you what they see so that you can become more aware. That's a critical component.
Did you feel like you had to constantly feed your subconscious with positive information once you kind of got started on the path back?
Yeah, well, I had to start. There's two things I had to do. I had to have the inlet, right, like any healthy lake, and I had to have an outlet. So the inlet was the positive information. I started with Tony Robbins. I went to Jim Rohn. Now I'm listening to very sophisticated stuff, on the universe. And the other thing I did for the outlet is, and these have continued since I began this journey. What I did was I started journaling. Right? Yeah. Because I had that, and that's where my books came from, was from the journals and what I discovered along the way, because our brain will fool us over time. We'll forget. So I encourage all students, anybody who wants to really perform better, to start journaling, get that outlet going, and I guarantee you'll pick those up later in life and you'll use them for something.
Doug, I'm speechless. I'm absolutely overwhelmed by what you're saying today, because I find my mind running in a whole bunch of different directions, many of which have nothing to do with physical trauma at all. Really, some of it sounds like societal trauma, or that it would be applicable at a government level or an institutional level.
Well, with boiled frog emotional, that's the only one out of all the trauma that I mentioned. When I say boiled frog, if you put a frog into cool water and turn up the heat, it will boil to death.
Right.
And what we're doing in society today, and this is why a lot of people who are interested in this, yes, individuals, of course, this works for anybody who uses it. My book will work for anybody who uses it. But for organizations, if you can get one individual performing better, what happens if you can get a group of individuals on a team performing better? What happens if you can get an organization performing better, and the leadership understanding how to lead all these high-performance people?
Yeah,
and so it scales. It's amazing. I'm blown away sometimes by the people who want to work with me.
Doug, where can people find the Trauma Code?
Oh, you can just go to thetraumacode.com, or you can go. My personal website also is DougSmithPerformance.com. And so either one will lead you to a very brief video of me breaking my neck. It's the only video of a professional hockey player breaking his neck going into the end boards full speed, and it's on the front page of my website.
Wow. And
what a way to start.
And I bet you when you look at that, you still cringe, right?
Well, it motivates me when I'm in front of an audience. I'm in Brockville tonight to speak, and I always play a short video beforehand to remind me of what happened to me.
Wow. Doug, we need to talk again sometime. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Very special interview, and we appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you. Doug Smith with us this morning, former NHL hockey player, and how he came back. Amazing stuff.